For 18 years, Jesus just disappeared. No miracles, no sermons, no crowds, nothing you'd look at and think, something big is happening here. The Bible barely says anything about those years. History doesn't fill in the blanks either. One minute he's 12, amazing the teachers in the temple. Next thing you know, he's about 30, walking into the Jordan. 18 years. People call them the silent years. I don't know. Hidden? Sure. Silent. I'm not convinced. The more I think about it, the more I wonder if we've been looking at those years the wrong way. We treat them like empty space because nothing dramatic happened. But maybe that's the point. Maybe those years matter because they don't look impressive. I guess that's why this story gets to me. I've had seasons where it felt like my life disappeared too. You open LinkedIn and somebody gets promoted. Open Instagram and somebody's launching a business. Someone else gets married. Someone buys a house. Then you set your phone down and wonder when everyone else figured life out while you somehow missed the memo. I hate how easy it is to think like that. We've started believing that if people can't see our lives, they don't really count. I don't think that's true. Being seen and being valuable aren't the same thing. Go back to Luke. Jesus is 12 years old, sitting in the temple, leaving the teachers speechless. If you're reading it for the first time, you expect everything to take off from there. Instead, he goes home. He listens to his parents. And then almost 20 years disappear. That's weird. If I were telling the story, I'd include all of it. What was he like at 18? At 22? At 27? Apparently God didn't think I needed to know. Maybe we don't. Because we're fascinated by the public moments. God doesn't seem nearly as fascinated. Jesus spent most of his life in Nazareth. Not exactly the place people dreamed about. He worked, built things, got up, went to work, came home, and did it again. Day after day, year after year. Somehow we've become uncomfortable with lives that look like that. Everything has to become content. Everything has to become a milestone. If nobody notices it, we start wondering if it mattered. I think that's made us impatient. We're always asking God what's next. Most of the time, he seems more interested in what's right in front of us. There's a good chance Joseph died during those years. Scripture never actually says it, but it would explain why he disappears later. If that's true, Jesus wasn't only learning carpentry. He was carrying a family, helping provide, learning responsibility, learning grief before he ever stood in front of a crowd talking about hope. That doesn't feel like wasted time. It feels like ordinary life doing something important. Luke says Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. I keep coming back to that word. Grew. Not exploded. Not suddenly became. He grew. I'll be honest. I don't like growing slowly. I'd rather skip ahead. Maybe that's exactly why I need this story. I think this is where a lot of us get it backwards. We treat preparation like it's just the hallway before purpose. Maybe preparation is part of the purpose. That changes everything. Jesus lived about 18 quiet years before 3 public ones. Some of us start wondering where God went after 3 quiet months. The world loves announcements. God seems a lot more interested in who we're becoming. That's a different way of keeping score. Nobody posts the years they felt invisible. Nobody uploads the mornings when they wondered if anything was changing. We admire finished houses. Hardly anybody thinks about the foundation. But without it, the house doesn't stay standing very long. So maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're just underground. Those aren't the same thing. Maybe you're living your own Nazareth. Showing up. Doing work nobody notices. Praying prayers that still don't seem to have an answer. Wondering if God somehow forgot about you. I don't think he did. I think we underestimate what God can do where nobody's paying attention. We've all watched people get influence before they were ready for it. It usually doesn't end well. So maybe God isn't holding something back. Maybe he's protecting you. Maybe he's protecting the people you'll one day influence too. I don't think God is in a hurry. Sometimes I wish he was, but I don't think he is. That frustrates me. It also gives me hope. Because if the Father didn't rush Jesus into ministry, why would I expect him to rush me? So if your life feels painfully ordinary right now, don't assume you've missed God's will. Don't mistake silence for absence. Don't mistake hidden for forgotten. Some things only grow underground. I've stopped believing that nothing is happening just because nothing exciting is happening. Some of God's deepest work is almost impossible to take a picture of. So here's the question I keep asking myself. What is this season doing inside me that success never could? Who am I becoming while I keep asking God to change everything around me? And if nobody ever noticed these years, would I still believe they mattered? That's why I keep coming back to Nazareth. Jesus spent most of his earthly life there. Think about that for a second. The Son of God spent most of his life doing work that looked completely ordinary. Working with his hands. Showing up. Being faithful. Most people would have walked right past him. They had no idea who they were looking at. We act like ordinary life is just the waiting room before the real story begins. I don't think it is anymore. I think ordinary life is where most of the story happens. Then one day Jesus walked into the Jordan. Still no miracles. No sermons. No crowds. No reputation. And before he'd done a single public miracle, the Father's voice broke through. This is my beloved Son. With him I am well pleased. That gets me every time. God said he was pleased before Jesus had anything public to point to. Before the crowds. Before the miracles. Before the cross. Worth came before achievement. It always did. The Father's love wasn't waiting at the finish line. It was already there. Back in the workshop. In the sawdust. During all those years, everyone else skips over. I don't think that's an accident. I think that's the point. For a long time, I kept asking God, when's my breakthrough? I still ask sometimes. Just not as often. These days, I find myself asking something harder. Who am I becoming while I wait? Because eventually the waiting ends. The opportunity comes. The prayer gets answered. The door opens. And whoever walks through that door won't be there by accident. Those hidden years will have shaped them. Waiting still stinks. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. But I don't automatically assume delay means God isn't there anymore. Sometimes he's growing something that simply refuses to grow fast. I don't always like that. But that's usually how the strongest things are built. So if you're living in your own Nazareth, don't despise it. The years nobody claps for are often the ones that change you the most. Jesus didn't need a crowd to become who he was. That happened long before the crowd showed up. I don't think God works much differently now. And honestly, I'm glad he doesn't. If this made you stop for a minute, send it to someone who's living through one of those hidden seasons. They may need the reminder more than they know.